Good evening, Canada and the rest of the world. Coming to you from Bauhaus Studios in beautiful downtown Port Credit, it's the Tom and Rick Show for Wednesday, November the 11th. Joining us tonight for our segment Eating Port Credit from the Crooked Q, John Pappas. Musical guest, singer and songwriter Johnny X. Musician and educator Dan Varga. Joining us from Beijing, China, singer-songwriter Ember Swift. Also cooking with Carson, and a special Remembrance Day segment with Tom and Rickford. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Tom Barlow and Rickford Van Dyke.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Tom and Rick Show. Thank you very much for joining us. There it is, Rick. Usually in this segment, this opening segment, we discuss what's happening in Port Credit, live music, who's playing where. That's not happening this week because there are new restrictions. And we are going to talk about those restrictions at length with our first guest, who is really on the inside track for what's happening. His name is John Pappas. He'll be joining us shortly. The long and short of it is we don't know where the show is going to come from next week. We are going to do a show somehow, somewhere. We believe with the new restrictions that we're not allowed to have anyone in your household who is not a member of your household, that we would not be able to do the show because, as you know, there's quite a few people that work behind the scenes. And even though they are masked and distanced, they're still in a home. But we will get that figured out, and we'll come to you from somewhere. Maureen from Shore was kind enough to say we could use her patio if we had to, but we will get that figured out. On the show this week, as I mentioned, John Pappas from the Crooked Q and BIA activist. We have Dan Fila, fantastic musician and educator, and he has an interesting take on the effect of COVID-19 on the emotional well-being of his students. We have local musician Johnny X. He has a new single coming out, and he will be playing it for us today. And of course, Cooking with Carson.
Now, we should talk about the awesome last week or we just had.
It was.
You starting with your gig on Thursday at the Shore. The weather was great.
It was beautiful. If there's anything that is helping us through this new wave of darkness, is that this weather is amazing.
Yes.
I got to play a live show on Friday.
They had Kenny V. Saturday I played with
what a
Chris
vibe.
Van Reed.
It was amazing.
So many people were there. And then Sunday was Susie and Andrew McTaggart. I mean, what a great vibe. What a great weekend. And now we're back in the dark ages. But we're going to try to do something to make some people... We got to do something to make people happy.
What else can we do?
But what a weekend.
Now, as you all know, it is Remembrance Day today. And I think it's important that we take a few minutes and talk about Remembrance Day and what it means to us as Canadians. I was in Europe a few years ago and went to the Canadian War Memorial in France. There's these big stones with all these names carved in them, date of birth and date of death. And as I was browsing by, they were alphabetical. I saw Barlow. There's like 10 Barlows who died in that battle. And I was looking at the ages of these kids, 18, 19, 21, 22.
Like our friends, like we would grow up and it'd be like, oh, well, Fred went to war, he's dead.
Exactly.
Just like that, instead of going to high school or college.
It just, it was such an eye-opener that these young men, mostly men, they were teenagers, really.
And that's why you should never forget.
That's why you should never forget. That's why we do this. And Port Credit has its own storied history of people who have made the ultimate sacrifice. A fascinating story that was sent to me by Bruce, regular at Shore. Bruce is really up on Port Credit history and sent me the story of Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Thompson.
Well, he was born in 1888. He enlisted on September the 17th of 1914. He volunteered. He didn't get drafted. He volunteered. He was wounded in April 1915. He returned to the front as soon as he was healed. So he went back to war, even though, he was promoted to captain in 1916. He's a recipient of the Military Cross, and he was promoted to major, and he received the Distinguished Service Award, and he was injured several more times. So he even got, more injured, if you can believe it, than over the next few years. And he was killed in action November the 19th in 1917 by a sniper at the Battle of Passchendaele.
I mean,
Wow.
you know, I often hear people say, you know, he's only 26, he's only 25, he's a child. And these people were going back to war after being injured
Can you believe it?
and making the ultimate sacrifice. And I think, you know, wear a poppy, support our veterans, and let us never forget.
That's correct.
We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited about having our next guest here. His name is John Pappas. He is the owner of the Crooked Q. For those of you who live in Port Credit, I'm sure you've had the great experience. You get there, which is you can play some pool, have some great food, have a drink, and I found it like a gem.
Yeah.
You know, a resource that we can go to, have a good time.
He put a lot of effort into his patio out front. It's like looks
gorgeous.
The best.
It is.
Yes.
It is just something we're very thankful
Yep.
to have in the community. And John is also a very strong advocate for businesses in Port Credit, and he is a member of the BIA. I was actually just invited on a conference call with BIA and our MP Sven. How do you pronounce his last name? Spangeman.
Yes.
And it was, you know, it almost brought tears to my eyes because you see people saying, we are dying. We are losing our businesses. We cannot pay our mortgages. We are not being supported economically in a way that will make us viable. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts of how you're advocating for change, maybe for someone who hasn't been to the Q before, can you tell them a little bit about the restaurant and the history of the restaurant?
Right. The Crooked Q is a place what I would call a premium pub. We do everything homemade in our own kitchen, but it's also a place that has many things going on. You can play pool, you can have a nice meal, you can have lunch, dinner. It's good for all ages. And in our second floor, we do a lot of events. Well, no events happening right now, but it's a place where you can have a special occasion, i.e. a milestone birthday or a corporate event. It's a very large place. We have 20 pool tables and capacity for over 400 people.
Wow. Now, you know, we go there a lot, as many of our friends do. There is right now a danger lurking that I don't think people are aware of when they say we're moving to a red zone or we're moving into a limited red zone. People are generally like, well, you know, that seems like the right thing to do. They don't see the impact on people. When you were advocating today on that Zoom call, it was very much focused on people, on your staff.
Right.
Can you explain to people that might not be aware what is happening to people?
Right. I think I could answer that in twofold. Number one, what we're advocating for is that on the record, our mayor and the mayor of Brampton and our local MPP have all said that restaurants are not the problem, that 0 cases of COVID have been transmitted in Peel region in restaurants. So number one, we feel like we're being scapegoated. We're the first to blame. We're the first to be closed down. We're the first to suffer restrictions. And then when those restrictions come, a lot of people think they're reasonable. Oh, that's reasonable, but it really isn't. What happens is that we lose revenues upwards of 50, 60, 70, and it's increasing, 80, 90%. And then when you lose all those revenues, what do you do with your staff? That's one thing for me personally, who owns the business, to cut my salary to basically 0. Then I have to deal with the expenses of the business, but then I have to go to my staff and say to a longtime staff member of 20 years, you have 3 children, you're a single dad. I have to put you on EI of $2,000 a month. And you know what? His rent is $2,100 a month. So I have a staff that's near a nervous breakdown going, how am I gonna feed my kids? How am I gonna live on $2,000 a month?
Yeah, I thought it was such an interesting point that your manager, sorry, I forgot her name. Cara was saying, my 16-year-old dishwasher qualifies for $2,000 a month.
Correct.
And she didn't begrudge him getting that.
That's right.
But a person with a mortgage, with kids in sports, they're going to have to take their kids out of sports. They might lose their house. There seems to be a disconnect between how that money is being allocated.
Yeah, well, the government's given a one-size-all-fits approach, right? So it all looks nice on paper, and they say these grand statements, we're investing so-and-so billions of dollars into supporting people. When you drill down to the individual level, the support is not enough. So for somebody like me, who makes a decent amount of money to have my income cut 5-fold or 10-fold, and then ask me to also support my staff, and then also to take on all the expenses of the business. It's not only financially crushing, it's spiritually crushing.
Yeah, and that's something, we really have to worry about. I like where you started this discussion, and that is, sometimes it's framed, the hospitals are full, people are getting sick, people are dying.
Yes.
Nobody needs to go out for a drink. It doesn't make sense to have people socializing when hospitals are full and dying.
Right.
And you're a reasonable, empathetic person. I've seen that based on the way you carry yourself in that meeting. You
Yes.
are not saying, let's do this even though it's dangerous.
Right.
You're saying it's not dangerous. And in fact, you're saying, if we close at 9 and there is a group of 25-year-olds in the bar at 9, they're not going home.
It's not just 25-year-olds
Or
it's
whoever.
50-year-olds.
They
too.
are not
Yeah.
going to go home at 9 o'clock. They're going to go, where to next, guys? And they're going to go to someone's house where there's
Right.
no contact tracing, where there's no rules, where no one is making them put a mask on.
Well, we're the professionals. We're highly regulated.
Yeah.
We're trained. We're safety trained. We're visited by bylaw. We're visited by fire. We're visited by all kinds of inspectors. Everybody has to have a certificate. So I would argue that our place is as safe as you can be. It's safer than your house. And if people think about that logically, they know it's true.
I've been saying that for months. Like, the bars have it together. All the protocols are met.
Yes.
Where is all this crushing down on the industry?
And if
coming
it was a driver, even if it was a small but significant driver, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You'd be happy to close, and we would understand that it's in the interest of public safety.
And what I
Totally.
would add to that is that the first measure of closing down the restaurants and gyms and whatnot, we all knew, and on my industry, that wouldn't do anything
And
to
it
flatten
didn't.
the curve. And it didn't. The cases are going through the roof, so you've unnecessarily punished our industry very early and quickly.
Now, let's say someone is watching at home. They're maybe not aware of the gravity of how this is affecting not just restaurants but businesses in Port Credit. How can people at home become involved? How can they say, you know what, these restaurants are a key part of our community and these businesses, and we want to support them in some way? What recommendations would you give to just the community at large?
Yeah, it's funny to say that. I am receiving a lot of support from my community. Our community is wonderful. Our patio is still open. People come and they say, I'm with you. People order takeout. They say, I'm with you. There's a lot of positive energy up there. I'm trying to support you as much as I can. But to be honest, when the government reduces your capacity of your place by 90%, 95%, and then
Yeah.
reduces your hours, and then throws you crackers for a wage subsidy, nothing the public can do can make up for those measures. It's almost impossible. So what we're advocating for is that if you decide that we need to be closed, please give us the proper support. And it's terrible for me to sit here and beg for money. That's not me. I've been a successful business person all my life, right? And then they force us to sit there and beg for more money.
Right. Well, we were discussing just before we went to, on air here. When GM was in trouble, it received a $13 billion bailout, which I supported
Right.
because I think we need to keep industry thriving in this country. It seems to me reasonable that you should get the same kind of support. And from what I'm seeing right now, it's not near that. First of all, it's complex. There's so many strands going on. When you guys were discussing this, I'm like, you need an accountant just to figure out what you can get.
Right.
There needs to be a simple, industry-wide, accessible support system. And I really appreciate all the work you're doing for the community. Is there a message you'd like to leave the viewers with?
Wow, that's a good question. And what I can say is that please stop scapegoating our industry. People should know that we're not the problem. I think if it's one thing, follow what Mayor Brown, Patrick Brown said yesterday, stop blaming the restaurants. We're not the problem. If we get closed, please support us. That's it.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, wise and insightful words from John Pappas from the Crooked Q. Thank you very much for spending your time with us today.
Yeah, thanks,
guys.
man.
And we will be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very talented musical guest for you this week. We call him Johnny X, but if you're looking for him on social media, his name is John, Nguyen. How would you pronounce that, John?
Binuen.
Exactly, Nguyen. And Johnny has been playing, I'm going to call you Johnny X because that's how I was introduced to you. Johnny has been playing every other Wednesday at Spice for, is it 10 years? 11 years?
11 years.
11 years. If that doesn't make you a part of the Port Credit musical establishment, 11 years, I can't keep a relationship.
I would
period
stop
for
by on a
11
Wednesday
years.
and see him. Fantastic guitar player, great voice, awesome.
And a great songwriter.
Yeah.
Now, you have some new stuff happening, Johnny. Before we get into the single, tell us about what it's been for you. I know you're doing some live streams, some live stream shows. What have you been doing? How have you been keeping your sanity in this lockdown?
A lot of music.
Writing a lot of music?
Yeah, writing a lot of music. I got a chance to just have the time to record a lot of music.
Right.
And just kind of, just doing a lot of music.
Just
Trying to
like
make the best of it, you know.
the learning the recording software. Did you learn more? Because you were all thrown into. We're not doing any shows.
Yeah.
But
right?
you were always
yeah.
busy producing, right?
Yeah.
I
Well,
was-
for
I
me, it
doing
was like that.
So, you know, still the same software.
Yeah.
Just got better at it.
Right. And this new project, this new single that we're going to hear shortly, is it different? Is there an evolution happening in your music?
Well, I'm putting out like an EP.
Right.
And what I was doing before, it was like the big guitars production thing, which I love doing. But in the songwriting process, there are a few songs that are kind of like more acoustically produced kind of thing.
Right.
And it wouldn't sound, it'd be too much to put a whole bunch of layers going on. So the EP is more sort of like a solo to a solo.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like the stuff that wouldn't cut it for like the big production album.
Right.
Do like a little, like an acoustic EP kind
But
of.
that's kind of cool because a lot of times you perform as a solo artist.
Yeah.
So it'll be nice for people to hear, songs that are broken down production,
Exactly.
and then go and hear that as it is on their favorite song, as they hear it at home.
Yeah.
Will you play us a little bit of that song?
Absolutely.
All right. What's it called, John?
Stars and Aliens.
Stars
Right on.
and Aliens, a global premiere from Johnny
Global.
X.
In the dark, I hit my head. Something I try not to do is I dream of moons and satellites. Yeah, I'd be you if you could be here. Something I would rather do is I feed on lines and cigarettes. And all this time, I must say I never liked the way we danced, but we danced anyway. Hey, it's talk of stars and aliens. What a cruel thing to pretend now. Hey, love, I'm now ready to begin. Can't figure out, I don't know. Your beauty is so goddamn effortless. I'm mesmerized by butterflies. Winter falls, you and I should stop receiving. Things are changing for the best. And all this time I never thought you'd say, and take our time and say, hey, it's talk of stars and aliens. What a cruel thing to pretend now. Hey, love, I'm now ready to begin. All that you are, all that I am. Laughing and crashing out. Everything changes. Why aren't you changing? I miss my beautiful friend. Miss my beautiful friend. What a cruel thing to pretend now. Hey, love, I'm not ready to begin. Hey, to talk to stars and aliens. What a cruel thing to pretend now. Hey, love, I'm not ready to begin. Keep ourselves from getting dizzier. Oh, as we rise from the fall, stars and aliens, they keep us from going crazy.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Gorgeous song.
Like,
Tell us about that song. Tell us what inspired it.
it started off being I wanted to write like a 4-chord song.
There's more than 4 chords in there.
I know. Yeah,
But
it's not-
you gotta keep it down. You might end up with 7 chords.
Yeah. It started out being a 4-chord song, and I just wanted to keep it a 4-chord song. Didn't turn out that way, but yeah, it was almost like an improv on a melody thing, and yeah, it was a failed attempt.
It's
Go
funny
for it,
because,
song.
you know, you said improv on a melody. Sometimes you scratch your head and you work so hard to get these lyrics, and sometimes you just start singing out loud. You're like, well, that's really good.
Or the opposite. Something's going on in your head and you start playing, you go, boo.
Yeah.
You know, that happens a lot to me, you know, instead of doing it out loud and going, oh, wow, that does sound good. But
Yeah, no, that's
hard to do.
how I do most of the songwriting.
And it's just like stream of consciousness, words
Yeah.
just come to you.
Absolutely. Like when I try to write a song, sit down to write a song, it just comes out. It's a disaster.
Yeah,
it
it
makes
happens,
it
man.
makes it
It
such
happens.
a weird and spiritual thing where
Totally.
the lyrics or the melody, nobody knows where they come from.
Yeah.
Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't come, and it's such a cool thing just to hear, you know, your inner brain write the song
Yeah.
and put your you know, your frontal lobe in the back seat for a
Totally.
change.
Yeah.
And I totally get that vibe from those lyrics.
Yeah, it's almost like like hearing the song for the first time when you play it back, because it's like, you know, it was totally like an unconscious thing to do
Right.
for me.
Awesome. Now, if the people at home they're watching, they say this Johnny guy is really great. I want more Johnny's of music in my life. How can they find you, and how can they support that?
I'm gonna be putting out the EP in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
And other than that, you can catch my lives. I'm still gonna be doing lives. I do once a week usually. It's like
not on
Thursday.
Wednesday?
It's a Thursday.
Okay,
Excellent.
not on Wednesday between 7 and 8. Yep. No.
Yeah, Thursday between
Thursday?
7 and 8.
7 and 8, Thursday.
Yeah.
man.
And so I'm doing that, and the rest of it, I guess it depends on what's going on in the world.
Because you work a lot.
Yeah.
When we're allowed to
I
work,
try to,
you
yeah.
work.
Yeah, you do work a lot.
You work a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Got
you
bills.
know, when all this madness is over, make sure you check out Johnny because he's a great live performer. As you can tell, he writes these beautiful songs. He knows like 1 million covers. 6 million covers.
Go support
And,
his live stream.
Yes,
Facebook.
and support his live
Thursdays.
stream.
Thursdays,
This is
7
great.
to 8.
Johnny, thank you very much for coming in. Thanks for playing us
Thanks
that
for having
beautiful
me.
song.
Appreciate
And
it.
we will be right back.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. I am so excited for our next guest. His name is Dan Fila, and he's a killer drummer. One of the best in Canada, Ontario for sure. When I was growing up and being 16 years old in a metal band, it's called Zero Option back then. He had a band called Varga, which was another metal band, but went sort of industrial. And they did like a video. They had a great hit on Much Music. They did a video. The song was called Freeze, Don't Move. And we all just went, whoa, we did, you know? And it was the first band to play inside Much Music as Power 30, like the first live band with amps in Much Music in 1994. And I think he opened for Metallica. Like, Dan Fila, everybody.
Right.
How you doing,
How's it
Dan?
going? Great, man. Great.
Tell us about opening up for Metallica, man.
That was, if you can imagine walking around like you're sleeping and dreaming, it was like that.
Yes.
So and it was we're direct support for them. It was a fan club show. So what happened is when they released their box set, the year before, we played at HMV at midnight when they released it, and we played all Metallica until
Wicked.
like from midnight till 3 in the morning.
Nice.
And then it came back. They repaid the favor. And the one thing I can tell you about that night is James Hetfield was on stage right in the wing. And halfway through the set, I looked over and saw him, and he just went.
Yeah, you give
That was it.
You give the Hetfield
Yeah.
nod.
Yeah,
Now, people out there know me from my Metallica tribute, Sandman, and I needed a drummer. We don't really get subs for that band. You never really. And the first person I thought of was Dan Fila, because who's gonna fill those shoes? And he came into the show in Ajax we did a couple weeks ago and just nailed it. And he was so passionate about it. He actually has a profile of Bloody Sticks on his Facebook. Just Bloody Sticks. You're in it or you're not. I love that passion. And I met James Hetfield and all the guys too, and they were very genuine. And that must have been an awesome experience.
That was cool.
And then another band that we grew up with is Svengali. Now you're playing drums with Svengali.
Yep.
How did that come about?
I tricked them into letting me join their band, basically. Yeah. So I'm not a fan of mediocrity, and mediocre drummers are probably my most the thing I like least in the world. And it's all or none. It's got to be all or none.
Hence
with
the blood on the
music.
sticks.
Yeah, and if you're going to do something, you need to do it properly. So I've known these guys, and we've been friends for years, and I genuinely love the guys. They're amazing people. They're all very interesting and talented. So I guess it would have been 3 years ago now. I invited the singer Dave to come over to my house and just to hang out and have a couple beers, and he invited Andy.
Oh, there's a
And,
band happening?
And there's somehow it turned into this jam. But what they didn't know is that I was learning their songs for 2 years before I invited them over for that. So when we jammed, it wasn't a jam. It was me destroying their songs.
Yeah.
And
this is the way to go, man.
yeah,
And then you were in.
yeah, pretty much.
Well, you're very passionate about it. And that's awesome, because I like that band too. And then videos are on your Facebook. We'll put that all on there.
Yeah.
But there's just you playing drums with that. It's so killer. And now, so years go by. I'd known Dan forever. And then I find out you're an educator, right?
Well, and this is part B of the interview. One of the things we've been doing on the show is talking to musicians who do other things.
Yeah.
And Jeff Salem, the Hot Sauce. Yeah, I think he's on Dragon's Den in the next couple of weeks, actually.
Nice.
And Dan is an educator in the Halton School Board. Now, it's a strange time to be an educator, and you're on a path to be a vice principal.
Yeah.
So tell us about what it's like to be in the schools in a lockdown. What are you seeing as effects on children with the world seemingly changing every week?
Yeah. Well, I can speak to my daughter because that's more personal. I think what the ministry and the boards are doing is the best that they can do. Kids are still in school, and they're genuinely trying to keep the education system going. It's an incredible plan. It has so many moving pieces. However, kids like my daughter have social anxiety, and Izzy was just a huge spirit. Like, she loved to be around people. She loved being the center of attention. And it went from that to her hiding in the closet in the morning, not wanting to go to school.
Right.
And to now not wanting to be around people.
Right.
And that's all directly related to the 6-month lockdown, where she had to readjust her life and readjust her thinking. School is much different. It's, I really miss the teenagers being teenagers. You know what I mean? That attitude and all of those things coming out. Everyone is very subdued and just, they walk in a straight line. Classes are silent, and it's just very strange.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, when we talk about the COVID crisis, we talk about number of new infections, we talk about percentage positivity. We talk about capacity in hospitals, number of people on ventilators, number of deaths. These are statistics that are measurable.
Yeah.
But you're telling us that an entire behavior of a generation of children is different.
Yeah.
So if we were a fly on the wall and it was a year ago, kids are doing this,
Yeah.
and now they are not doing that.
Yeah.
They're quieter, they're subdued, and this is, an emotional effect that I don't think society at large is talking about.
No, we're not going to see the effects, like the true effects from this, until 5 years from now. As far as, curriculum has become condensed, so there's gaps in learning.
Right.
And, we had a quadmester, which is 10 weeks. So they've divided the year up into 4 pieces. And you cannot deliver the curriculum as mandated in that period of time. You have to pick the big pieces, what you want to see at the end of the quadmester. We're going to see a generation of young people who don't know how to communicate with each other anymore, other than with text or on a computer. My daughter is far more comfortable speaking with someone on a computer than with a person. She's scared.
Right.
And it's we're basically forcing kids to learn online.
Right.
And then when they get done working online, they go online and they talk to their friends. And there's so many studies that show the negative impacts of being online and what it does to your brain. And she's got her phone over here, she's got a laptop over here, she's got on my Mac here, and it's got all these things going on, and her brain just must be like just crushing.
Well, humans need other
Right.
humans.
Yeah,
Human interaction.
It's this massive social experiment,
Yeah.
and we don't know what's happening, and we don't know what the effects are going to be.
Yeah.
Now, let's fast forward and say you're a vice principal today, and the school board has said to you, what are you going to do to protect these children? They're not only not learning the curriculum, but they're not learning social skills. And there's a window when someone is 11, 12, 13, where they're
Yeah.
learning those social skills. How do
Yeah.
you think, you as the future vice principal,
Yeah.
how could you make that a better experience so they're not losing those critical social skills?
That's a great question. It's a really good question. I think it has to come from top down, right?
Right.
It has to come from directive from the ministry and the board. In a school, what you want to do is build relationships with kids, get the kids to trust you, to want to come to school, to know that they're valued. And, I tell my kids all the time, I love you guys, I care very much about you, your safety and well-being is so important to me. Please come back to school tomorrow.
Right.
I said that before, I say it now, and I mean it. And the thing with kids is they're not going to care about what you know until they know that you care about them.
Right.
And that's what I would instill in my staff. Because as a vice principal, it's not your job to go and, to change all these things. It's to lead the people in the building towards that change.
Right.
And leaders are leaders because they've proven to be effective and efficient at their job. You're not going to follow someone around, follow someone's lead if they don't know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
If they're leading people down wrong paths. And you don't get many chances to do that.
Right.
So I've been very intentional in my leadership journey towards becoming a vice principal because I've seen people go down that path and just get destroyed.
Right. Well, it's a fascinating and scary. I know I have anxiety because you wake up, the first thing you do is you flip the news on, you go, wow, more people are dead and more people are infected, and we're grown men. Imagine the emotional toll on an 11-year-old, 12-year-old.
Yeah.
They're watching the same news we're watching.
Yeah.
They're living the same reality. It's good to know that there's that people generally care about them
Yeah.
and are looking out for their best interests. I think now more than ever, educators are not just providing a safe space to learn, but are trying to save this generation of kids from going to a dark place. So we definitely appreciate what you're doing, And what an interesting journey from opening for Metallica to trying to take care of the emotional well-being
See?
of children.
Metal is not so bad, isn't it? We're
Saved
so
by metal.
Bad. Saved by metal all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Dan Fila. Sorry, I said Varga before. And we will be right back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Tom and Rick Show. Rick will be right back. In the meantime, we have a fascinating guest from halfway around the world. She is in Beijing, China right now. Her name is Ember Swift. She has recorded 12 albums and 1 DVD. Her music has elements of folk and funk and blues. She moved to China in 2008, where she continued her recording and performing career. She sings in Mandarin, English, and French, and is fluent in Mandarin. And as a musical guest, Ember would be a fantastic musical guest, and we'd love to have her. But she also has an amazing insight being in China, where this virus began. And Ember used to do blogs, still does, which basically are saying, I'm coming to you from your future. And she would discuss things like homeschooling, virus spread, mask mandates, lockdowns, and the lockdowns versus freedoms, what's appropriate, PPE shortages. These are things that were not even on our radar, that no one was talking about. And Ember was saying, this is coming, this is your future. Most people in Canada, including myself, thought, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We get to have a one-on-one right now with Ember. Ember, thanks very much for taking the time. I know it's early in the morning for you there, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like? By the time we had to start thinking about the coronavirus, we had already seen what's happened in Spain, what happened in Italy, and what happened in China. But you had no warning. There was no one telling you this is your future. What was it like to be on the ground when you were trying to figure out what was happening?
Well, it was a big shock to the system in January when everything shut down so suddenly here. And, you know, certainly just like everyone else in the West is feeling now during the second wave, there was a sense of our liberties being taken, and suddenly the world is progressing without us, and everyone here in China had to press the pause button. And that was disappointing and frustrating, and all the feelings that everyone's felt. At least now, with it being a global issue, we can globally all be frustrated and globally all be compassionate, right? Ideally. At the time, though, it was disappointing, and especially in terms of the global impression about China, which I know is often portrayed very negatively in the media and in the West. So I had the thought of, oh, great, you know, another reason to villainize this country, which did happen, and I think is still happening to some degree, but less so. Now people can see that China's worked really, really hard to control this.
Right. Now, you were mentioning that you have kids at home, and now you have to be the musician, the writer, the teacher, the student. You have to be all of these things. What is it like to have, because I understand the lockdown was quite severe. It was brief, but quite severe in China. What was it like to have to wear all of these hats?
Well, it was very difficult. It was crazy making. It was hair pulling. It was awful. Yes, I had a couple of tours canceled as a musician. Luckily, I have a sideline business with a home studio, and I do lots of music production and voiceover work. So I had a bit of an income stream still, but I had a huge cut and shavings in my revenue. And then, of course, I had kids underfoot. My son was nearly 7. My daughter will be 9 in January. So they were both off school, and suddenly I was having to be their teacher, which I am not good at. So it was a struggle. Luckily, I live in a housing compound. That's the other thing about China, is that compounds are gated. So people were not allowed to go into other people's compounds. Right. But luckily, in this compound with several apartment buildings in it, their grandparents also live, who helped me raise the kids. So the grandparents were able to, we were spelling each other off in terms of childcare, which was very, very helpful. I was still able to get about 50% of work time in. It was hard. It's been hard for everyone. So, yeah.
Now,
Same feelings that you had there.
now, can you describe? I know you have family here. I know you're in touch with people here all the time. Can you describe the difference between, say, a lockdown here and a lockdown there, or the way the government imposes restrictions or mask wearing or isolation?
Sure. Well, here in China, of course, it's a very different government system, and people are traditionally familiar with following the rules here. It's a conformist culture when it comes to legal issues, and in this way, that was very helpful to China, because when the government mandated certain things, people did them. And the way that the cascading power structure here, where it's, the central government and then all the way down to the community level, which includes housing compounds, those rules were enforced, but to the letter, which meant that suddenly there was a collective requirement to do certain things like mask wearing, though in parentheses, mask wearing hasn't always been unusual here. This is a place that struggled with air quality over the years. And in the last few years, we've had very good air quality comparatively. So even though we haven't been wearing masks for air quality issues, people are familiar with the need to occasionally wear them. So that wasn't such a huge cultural thing, which it was in the West, with mask wearing was so unusual and felt so strange for Westerners.
Right. It was not considered robbing you of your freedom to wear a mask, for example.
Exactly. And though I am Canadian, and I had moments of being very frustrated with having my movement controlled, the places I could and could not go, the fact that I could not opt out of certain apps on my phone, and I had to prove my health status everywhere I went. Those were frustrating for me, those issues, those elements to the lockdown. But post-lockdown, I'm super grateful for this environment, because they really quickly managed to put a lid on this virus here. And now life is starting to come back to normal. As a musician, I've been gigging since early September, and that is amazing. It's great.
I mean, it's amazing to hear anyone gigging. And we were talking prior, you were saying you don't mean a gig with 10 people in a theater that holds 500 people. You mean legitimate crowds of people you get to play for.
That's right. In August, several of my jazz musician friends started to have gigs, but they weren't allowing singers on stage. They certainly weren't allowing anybody to not wear a mask on stage, which is why singing wouldn't work.
Right.
And they were doing a lower capacity audience. But around September, those rules lifted again, and they again cascaded those kinds of restrictions. It was lessening and lessening and lessening. And if there's another wave here, they will just reinstate those restrictions again.
Right. I mean,
but so far it's a full house, and there's no social distancing in venues or restaurants.
It's just such a positive and hopeful thing. You coming to us from our future, saying that if you manage this well, this will happen. It doesn't have to be a 2-year project. It could be sooner. Now when you talk about the way lockdowns are imposed, and you told me earlier that this was an extreme example, but you posted on your blog, people literally had their doors welded closed from the outside if they were violating protocol. How was that received? It seemed very scary to me.
It was shocking, and those decisions were made by individual housing compounds. And when that was posted online, it was shocking to Chinese people as well,
right,
to think that they would not be trusted to stay in their homes. Therefore, the compound police would come along and weld their doors shut. This
Wow.
was shocking to people, but it didn't happen across the board. There were cases all around, and different places dealt with it differently. And well, at that time, they were isolating people who tested positive in their homes, but now they're isolating the country. So people can't get back into China now.
Right.
And many people got locked out of China. There are several expat families that I know of who escaped in the early wave and then never could return and had to move remotely, had to get their things shipped back to their respective countries, because even now with this new wave, China is restricting people from coming back in.
Right.
So it started at restricting at the apartment level, the apartment small dwelling level, and now it's national borders.
Isn't it fascinating that people thought we have to get away from this virus, and they flee China to say come to the U.S., and now China is the place where you're not going to get the virus, and the U.S. has 100,000 new cases a day or whatever is happening down there. But let's move on from the virus for a second, and let's talk about you as a musician. You are working on a new album. As we all know, it's a lot of work. There's the artwork, there's the mixing, there's the mastering. A lot of wheels are in motion, and suddenly you are not releasing your album. How did you manage your time, and what did you do when you couldn't do your tours and release your album?
Well, when the album got so delayed because of all of these elements, it gave us more time to really focus on the songs and to do a really detailed analysis of all the arrangements and editing and just trying to make these songs absolutely perfect. So the time to focus was a gift with the lockdown. And, you know, the delay became a universal delay, a global delay. So I didn't feel then so, you know, cut up about the fact that my plans had to be pushed back. Many tours got canceled, but I got a chance to do more practicing. And
Right.
I think that there are things that have been really positive about the way that this world had to go on pause, you know, and I'm really grateful for what that gave me, even though it was a struggle. Now I think the album is that much better because of the extra time I've been able to give to it, and I'm hoping that it will be released in Asia sometime in the early part of 2021 and probably in the West around March.
Well, Ember, would you be kind enough to give the audience a sneak? It's not coming out till spring of 2021, but it would be fantastic if you could give the audience a sneak preview. Would you play us a song?
I will, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to play you a song from my new body of work. It's called Skin on Skin. Fall down, I get myself up. I found that the earth can't hold me. To pull down is gravity's lock. Up with the stars and I'm spinning wildly. Hands in hair and necks in hell. I don't know the way back now. Poison air and passes fail. Wings are not a welcome sound. What do we know? What do we know about love? What do we know? We don't know a thing about it. So put your lips on mine. Let's take our bodies dancing. Sweat until we slide. Skin on skin. Let's take our bodies dancing. Sweat until we slide. Skin on skin. Skin on skin. I kick hard as I breathe through water. Like curves as I spiral upwards. Too wet to find a fire starter. Come up for air and time rolls backwards. Close your eyes, imagine sun. Please show me the way back down. Edge the tower, cock your gun. Things are not a welcome sound. Oh, what do we know? What do we know
Wow, what a fantastic vibe. Really, really cool. Thank you very much for playing that for us, Ember. Is this the direction of the album? How does this resemble what's going to appear on the album if people pick it up in the spring?
The album is a full band album. It's very poppy and very light. I mean, this is a song about just taking a moment and connecting with a person, just connecting,
Right.
and maybe maybe putting down all these convoluted thoughts, just connecting. So it's a song. It's an album that is about trying to, find the lightness in life, which I think is probably useful after 2020.
I would say it's far more impactful on me now than probably it would have been a year ago, because everything feels so weighted and heavy right now. So I know I appreciate that piece of art right there. Ember, thanks very much for coming in. No, you didn't come in, for being on and getting up early to do the show. Before you have to go, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, I would like everyone in the West, particularly the art makers, but those who have a job that includes the public, I think that I'd like to leave them with some optimism that it's going to be okay, that it's going to get back to normal, that live music will never die, that there will be crowds and gatherings and people will be able to see their loved ones, and it's going to be okay. And I'm that voice from the future. Mind you, I have been in a country that's controlled it very, very well, but I do think that slowly the West will get their grip on it, and it's going to be okay.
Well, that's a beautiful sentiment.
Coming at you with the comforting sentiment.
Believe me, just you saying that made me feel better. And people can find you at emberswift.com.
That's right, yes.
And you're probably on Instagram and Facebook and all of the regular spots.
That's right. All those links are there from my website. But yeah, and my music's available in all the digital outlets. So yeah, it's very easy to find. Ember with an E, Swift, just like Taylor, though there's no relation.
Ladies and gentlemen, please support Ember Swift and her amazing music. Look for her album in the spring. And if we're still doing this in the spring, we will definitely remind everyone to check it out. Thank you very much for your time today, Ember, and we will be right back.
I'd like to know. I have to go again.
Wow, another fantastic introduction. Thank you so much, guys. Those are kind of the highlight of the show now. Okay, how many of you have tried the world's greatest chili? There's so many recipes out there that people claim to make the world's greatest chili. And tonight, I'm going to make Carson's chili. I'm not going to claim it to be the best in the world, but I'm going to say that it's my own personal favorite because there's so many ways you can add your personality to a stew, which is basically, chili is basically a stew. And all the flavors that you like, and then you can make it your own. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. The key is I'm going to be using, instead of ground beef, today I'm going to be using some really nice beef shoulder that I use my cleaver to chop up. Okay? Okay. This is a great kitchen tool to have. Very sharp, the weight of it. It's very safe if you have your hand on top of the knife. Your fingers are very far away from that. Super sharp, and these are like, you go to a Chinese market, $20. Okay? Don't spend more than that. Okay, some beautiful, beautiful beef shoulder. And what I'm going to do is I have my induction burner making its appearance another time, 2 weeks in a row. And I got a little love for this. It got some love. I didn't get the love. People mentioning this. a great little tool here that I get to use in front of you guys. Okay, I'm heating up my pan, and what I'm going to do is first off, add a little bit of oil. This is olive oil. You can use any type of oil. This is a good quality olive oil that's not going to burn when I'm using it. Okay. And I'm going to let that heat up. And first what I'm going to do, let me start building my aromatics by adding some purple onions. I kind of cut these a little bit chunky because this chili is going to cook for a long time. It's going to cook slow and low for several hours, and it's going to build a lot of great flavors. But I'm making those onion chunks and my red and yellow bell pepper pieces a little bit bigger, so that when they break down, they have more flavor and kind of throughout the stew, they give you a little bit more texture. Okay? So stirring these in the oil, right away, like I said, we're going to build flavors, and I'm going to add some salt and pepper. In goes the sea salt. In goes the black pepper. I'm going to stir this around just so the juices start to come out before I add my beef in there. I'm going to cook the chili in a larger pot, but I wanted you just to be able to see how this comes together before I add it to that. Here. The great thing with a pot, if you have handles, you don't need a spoon. You kind of shake it like that. And let's stir it around a little bit too. And I'm going to add in my beef. Now, this is like, once you're done with this meat, it's going to be kind of like if you're making braised beef, braised short ribs, really nice stewing meat. It can break down after a while, okay? And what I like to do is, ground beef, sometimes there's even organ meat in there and a lot of sinew. And with this, it's going to have that kind of pulled pork effect with pulled beef. And like I said, you can make this your own, and you can use all sorts of proteins. What I like to do too is use turkey meat or chicken, but what I'll do is I'll cube it up just like the beef. And when it's cooked down, you can kind of shred it, and it just adds a really cool texture. It's going to be very different from the ground beef chili that you might have grown up with. Now, most of those recipes have the world's greatest chili. Those are not necessarily meat like this. So this is an element to make it, I think, even better. Better quality meat. Because this is like, they call it chili con carne, right? Meat chili. Now, lots of spices here. This one here is a spice blend that I made with different ingredients. Now, to be really nerdy, I made my own chili powder. What you do is you dry roast a lot of the dried chilies, and you can kind of mix them and create your own heat. So this is some poblano peppers, some nice dried chilies. And it's not super hot, but it does have a little bit of kick to it. This here is some Mexican oregano, some dried Mexican oregano. The difference is it just has a little bit more of a smoky flavor, and it adds a lot of crunch. So I just have actually a pinch there. Some smoked paprika, some cumin, and this is my special secret ingredient. But because most of you watching know me, I'm going to share my secret with you. Okay? Usually when somebody says they have a secret ingredient, it means that ingredient is something they're not really proud of mentioning. I have no problem telling you what that is. This is kind of funny, but try this at home. It's the pre-bought, packaged taco mix that you would add to a taco blend, or sometimes they'll have it for fajitas and stuff like that. I find too much of it is a little overpowering, but there's just kind of some nice flavors that are in there, and actually some spices that are hard to find here in Canada. So this is browning nicely as I stir it around. This is really just to add color and build those flavors before they stew for a long time. A lot of people say that they prefer soups and chilies the next day, okay, or a couple days later when they've kind of turned my heat down, after they've kind of sat in the fridge for a while. If you want to get that same effect, you can just cook it slow and low on your burner for a long time. And there's one other little trick that I'll show you at the end of this recipe that's just going to kick this up to a whole new level. Okay, so my next step, I'm going to turn the heat off here. It's supposed to be cooked for quite a while. Just take this rogue onion, put it back in the pot. I'm going to transfer it to pot. Here it is. Another pot right here. I'm going to put these ingredients in here. All my beef. Before I added, I'm going to add some tomato. You can hand crush the tomatoes. This recipe doesn't matter too much because it is cooked for so long. I just used my immersion blender and I gave it a quick pulse. I do want some chunks of tomato in there, but I don't want it fully pureed. And I'm just put this in here. Gotta be honest, I'm afraid of burning my hands. Okay, here we go. Put in some of this tomato paste. Before I do that, this is not tomato paste, crushed tomatoes. I'm gonna stir that on and get some of the fond that's built up on the bottom of the pan. Why? Because we created that flavor, and I don't want to pour it down the sink. Just put it right back into this chili. This needs about a cup of water. There we go. And I'm going to put this on the top of the stove. I'm going to simmer it and I'm going to check on it every half hour. I'm going to cook it for about 2 to 3 hours. I'm going to show you what the final result looks like.
Hey guys, the chili is smelling great, but it's not finished yet. I'm going to add 2 ingredients in there. First of all, I'm going to add some pinto beans. Now, often I'll use kidney beans, I'll use black beans, whatever I'm feeling, or whatever's in my pantry. And today it was pinto beans. These are the ones that you use in refried beans. These ones are already cooked and they taste fantastic. So I didn't add them till now. So it's been cooking for about an hour. I'm gonna put them in there and they just have a beautiful meatiness. Sometimes I'll make a chili just using beans, but I'll always make sure that one of the beans in there is pinto beans. Gonna add some great flavor, great texture. Another thing I'm gonna use is some of this mesa flour. Remember we used corn flour a few weeks ago when I did the tortilla recipe, making corn tortillas, okay? And what this does, this is a really bomb ingredient. What I do is I just put a little bit of the flour into the chili and I'm gonna mix that around. It's gonna thicken it, but it's also gonna give it a really nice flavor, something that your regular all-purpose flour wouldn't do. So I'm gonna go ahead, add these 2 ingredients in, and then I'll be right back and we'll pretty much have the chili ready to eat. Okay guys, chili is finally ready. It's gonna taste fantastic. Just a few tips for you at home. You can use any protein you want, any types of meat as I mentioned, but some of the little things to enhance the flavor are just gonna be the toppings. I have very basic here. I got some shredded cheese and some cilantro. You could do corn, scallions, you can do all sorts of herbs and spices, but with no further ado, let's get the chili into the bowl. And trust me, this smells fantastic. I can see that the beef here is broken down. Some really, oh man, just look at that, eh? My cilantro. A little bit of shredded cheese. It's just going to melt right on there. More cilantro on top. And guys, is Tom around? I think Tom is in the sense.
Tom is chili. Right Tom there. Is around.
Yeah. There you go. Try that, man.
All right.
It's your kitchen.
It's very exciting. Wow. Trust me, really great.
So have you had the world's best chilies? Have you had anything that claimed to be the world's best chili? Because I'm not claiming this is the world's best chili, but I'm saying this is
the world's best chili.
That's fantastic, right? So
in this kitchen.
Yeah, it's the best chili in this kitchen. Because what you got to do is you got to make a recipe your own. So when you there's flavors that you love, you keep adding to them. So if Tom made this, he might add a little bit more spices, more this and that, but you can make it your own way. Anyways, try that at home. Make some chili. We've had beautiful weather, but it is going to get chilly, right? So try it at home. Have a great week, guys.
less.